So I took a step back and I was like, okay, you have to figure out a way to navigate the job market differently than you've been told to do.
Move over, baby boomers. It's time for Gen XYZ. It's time to stop waiting on the world to change. It's time to be the change. It's time to stop thinking about how your life can be better. It's time to start taking action, massive action to improve your life. Join Zach Winter and Markadare Rios every week as we learn how others had the grit, determination, and conviction to 10x their lives, and as we explore ways that can help you 10x your life.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the 10x for Gen XYZ podcast. I'm Zach Winter.
And I'm Markadare Rios.
And today we're really happy to have as our guest Zakiya Akarele. She's the author of the recently published book, Dump Your Degree: How to Repurpose Your Education, Control Your Career, and Gain Financial Freedom. And she really has an expertise in helping recent college graduates find meaningful work for them, meaningful careers. So Zakiya, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So congratulations on your recently published book. That's very exciting.
Thank you. Yes, I am very excited about it.
It's been a long time coming, or
yes.
are you able to knock a book out every 3 weeks?
Well, yes and no. So this was a long time coming. I didn't know which direction to take. First, right. I felt like my tone was very academic because that was my background. Right. And then I decided, you know what, I want to speak to the audience in a different way. I want to focus on, current college students, recent grads, early professionals. So I shifted the tone in a lot of the information. Mm-hmm. So yes and no, it took me a while to get to that point. But once I figured that out and kind of redid a few things, it maybe a few months.
I love it.
To write everything. Yeah.
I love it. Good.
Maybe we could chat a little bit about what your background is and what led you to what you're currently doing and to writing the book.
Yes, so I have a background in higher education. I'm formerly a professor in the humanities, focusing on world religions. But before that, I got 4 degrees, the highest being a Ph.D. And at that time, we were coming out of a recession. So it was very challenging for me to find work. And I had never been in that position before. I've worked on and off, since a teenager, summer jobs, after school jobs, and also throughout my undergrad and graduate studies. So to come out and be unemployed was a new thing for me. I was completely shocked, and it took a toll on me, not only professionally, but mentally. I was depressed. I was like, how can I find work? I'm used to, being able to find something. Yeah. So I took it personal. I was like, it must be me, not realizing or not putting the pieces together like, oh no, this is going on for a lot of recent graduates. Talking with colleagues, and they were explaining that they too were faced with those challenges, not finding work in higher education or whatever their field was. So I took a step back and I was like, okay, you have to figure out a way to navigate the job market differently than you've been told to do. So I thought about not focusing solely on the academic achievements, right? The degrees that I had, but more so focusing on everything that I had to offer, whether it was my skills, my talents, things that I knew how to do that may not necessarily be tied directly to a job, but that would work in the job. It would be transferable. Right. So I looked at all these things and I decided to approach looking for work in different fields. And lo and behold, I was afforded the opportunity to work in areas that I did not have the academic background in. And so it's like, okay. For
example, like what?
So I have a background in philosophy and religion, which is my primary focus, although I do have a master's in international ed. But one of the jobs that I ended up getting was in a research manager position related to drug research.
Oh, wow.
For a big NGO. And I was like, okay, so how do I tap into that? Because I have the research skills. I have a doctorate. Though they weren't looking for someone with a doctorate in religion, right? But I was able to write at the time, I don't know if people look at cover letters as much anymore, but at the time, write the cover letter and articulate, the ways in which my skills would connect.
Mm-hmm. And you were probably saying something that spoke to their soul, philosophically. It landed on there.
Maybe that was it. So, and I ended up getting an interview. And then during the interview process, I was able to connect with the interviewer because she too had a PhD and things like that. And also what they were looking wanting to do in that city with regards to research, I had the community connections to leaders in that community. So I led with that, not my academic background.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I was like, this is what I can provide based on what I have as far as skills, connections, and everything. And this is how I could be an asset. I was not taught that in college. You know, I was taught here's the program of study, blah, 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 not how to navigate my career in another way. So I eventually ended up getting my dream job as a professor, because that was my ultimate goal. But when I was a professor, I noticed my students, they could be dean's list students, were graduating and either were unemployed, significantly underemployed. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're challenged with the same things I was. So that's what kind of led to the idea of the book. How do I help others not solely focus on their academic achievements and background, but how can they develop a career outside or do things in conjunction with their education, but also focusing on other assets that they may have.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know, it's very interesting if you think about like the educational path, especially once you hit college, you're trying to identify a career that you want to go into, and you pursue a major that will lead you to that career. But a lot of times, like in your experience, when you get out and you have a certain degree, you can still apply that degree and your education to a myriad of other different types of careers and different types of jobs.
Exactly. And that's the point I was making in the book, which is to repurpose your education. We get so focused, we get a tunnel vision, like, oh no, I studied this. The next thing in line is to get a job in XYZ, but it's not that. It could be transferred in different fields, or you can create your own opportunities, your own job without waiting for someone to hire you, and using the skills and the knowledge that you have.
Were you, are you talking almost specifically about really kind of juicing up some of your soft skills and things like that? That's a buzzword nowadays. Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Well, that's one way. Yeah, definitely. I know that I was looking at a study, I think it was maybe a year or two ago, that they surveyed the Human Resources Association surveyed a lot of people in that field. And they said that over half of them reported that college graduates don't have skills or soft skills that are needed. So they have the education, but when they're looking to get hired, there's a big disconnect because they don't have the skills that the employer may need. So definitely learning how to use those more effectively.
What's a definite? I'm not familiar with that term, soft skill. What are soft skills?
Like critical thinking, interpersonal, things that may not be taught in a degree program.
Right. Yeah. No, it's so interesting. There's so many things they don't teach you in college that are basic skills that you need. You know, like I'm fascinated by the fact that you don't learn personal finance, the basics of personal finance, anywhere from elementary to high school through college, right? You have to figure it out on your own, how to balance a checkbook and how to balance your income and expenses. And most people never really grasp that. And that, I think that's one of the reasons why the savings rate for Americans is atrocious. People aren't able to balance their checkbook. They're living above their means. But that's just one example of, I think, these skills that people aren't taught.
And it's even worse now. I mean, on that front, it's even worse now, because now the people younger than us, right, who are fully in the digital age, really didn't come up with a hard checkbook. They are hard. Now it's all digital. So they're like, well, the computer's supposed to do it for me. So that's even worse, right?
I definitely agree. That's why I gave basic kind of like everyday advice in, you know, the Money Moves chapter of my book, like how do you budget, you know, preparing to pay off credit cards, don't get excessive amounts of debt, you know, those basic things that I wish someone had taught me better. And my mom did a good job, but there were a lot of things I just didn't know, or I assumed that I know, right? And maybe she assumed that I knew. And it got me in a little trouble when I was in my early 20s, getting out of grad school, getting a credit card and not really knowing the ins and outs as I should have. So I wanted to give that advice as well in this book because I didn't get it myself.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's a big, like I was recently tracking credit card usage and credit card debt. And as we're slipping into this potential recession or recession that we may already be in, you're seeing the younger people have really elevated their credit card debt. That's how they're dealing with inflation, is just continuing to spend what they've been spending, but now they're racking up credit card debt.
But also, just to add on that point too, and this is anecdotally, but I would also think that people see their money in their bank account as cash, their checking account probably, and the credit card, and they're like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to need this liquid money, so why don't I just go ahead and put my groceries on the card, and why don't I, you know what I mean? And pretty soon, it's very easy to hit $1,000 on a credit card in today's, in today's world, very, very quickly.
Right? Yeah. And the logic behind that, if you think about it, if you're paying 14, 18% on a credit card, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, at all.
Well, yeah, because everybody thinks, the recession, if there's something coming, it's going to be pretty quick, and I'll be able to pay it off, and so very interesting.
Zakiya, do you also work with, when you take on a new client who's, let's say, a recent graduate and is struggling, they don't have a job, they're struggling with figuring out what they want to do. Do you assist them with certain tests to help them identify what would be a good career, or what's your approach towards that?
Yeah, I definitely ask them about, of course, taking like things that are related to their personality, right? Because a lot of times I've encountered students or clients whose parents have kind of pushed them along their career path that they may not be interested in it. And so I've had parents come to me actually say, well, can you convince my child to go in a different direction? I'm like, no. And it's interesting because some of them are already successful in the area they want to be, or you can tell that they're on a good start, right? So they might have already started a small business or be a content creator, but there's a disconnect in that generational gap where the parent might not be like, what is that? That's going to be useless, right? So I like to discuss what they're passionate about, connect things to what their personality matches with, to see what would be a better fit for them, not just things that they might have heard on YouTube, or maybe their parents, kind of push them towards, but doing some reflection on what is best for them.
And do you have clients who are currently employed, but they're not happy? They think it's not the best path for them? Yeah.
Those are actually, interestingly enough, those are the main ones. And that's kind of also what sparked it for me, is even in my peer group of friends, people who were highly educated, making great money, hated their jobs, just didn't feel like it was the best thing, but may have felt like they would be irresponsible to either leave or do something unique or different, or that was not considered stable or functional. So I'm actually working on a new program related to that is not out yet, but because I'm seeing a lot more within my generation, me being a millennial, that are like, okay, they're kind of in the middle of having parents that said, you got to do something that's stable, but seeing how we've evolved digitally and how you can be a creative in other capacities and earn money.
You're not going to see Gen Xers saying anything like that.
Are you sure?
I know, I'm just kidding.
A good potential base of clients for you could be recent graduates from law school, or people who have been out of law school for a few years and they've been grinded down by the massive hours they have to put in working at law firms. I know I graduated a long time ago, but I'd say maybe half of the people I graduated with aren't practicing law anymore.
It's interesting you say that. One of my closest friends is a family lawyer, and he is like, I'm done. I even mentioned him in the book because he's like, I know I can't. So he's now focusing on health and wellness, but still incorporating his skills as an attorney, but he's pivoting out of the legal field.
Wow. Yeah. That's I know a few young lawyers actually who have graduated within the last 6 or 7 years, and kind of watching how they're transitioning into their careers, not necessarily stopping practicing, but like you said, Zach, just getting grinded down by the partnership system, or, trying to find their way within all that. And also just realizing that, like pretty much every other professional, career, they don't make any money just because they come out of school with this degree. I see these kids like absolutely flat broke and still working their butts off.
They could, well, I don't, you know, I mean, if they're working at a law firm where it's civil litigation, they could do well with it. But you know, they could also be living above their means. I mean, lots
Yeah,
of
that's true.
lawyers and doctors, they
Right.
do well, but they're living above their means, so they're not saving anything.
Yeah. And maybe
But-
that's all that was, because I remember a conversation I had with somebody. It was actually the people that were around her who thought that she was able to pick up the tab now that she was a lawyer, right? And
Oh,
she could
yeah.
do her family and things like,
Right.
well, you can handle it. You're a lawyer. And she's like, what are you talking about? I got $400,000.
Right.
Yeah, doing that, right. Well, you know, the interesting thing is, I mean, a lawyer is a perfect example. You're a kid when you're in college, really, you're still a kid. And if you decide to go directly into law school, you're what, maybe 21 years old. And so you don't really know that you want to practice law, and you've never, even in law school, you don't practice law. You learn legal theory, you learn case law, you learn the theory of civil procedure. And it's not until you've graduated and you're actually at a law firm where you actually learn what practicing law actually is. And it's very different than learning theory in law school.
That's
Yeah.
very interesting. That like, if you try to compare lawyers with with doctors, say, and when you have those times, like, I know for doctors, it could probably be a situation where you're doing your residency, it's tough, but there's a community, and it's also really, really kind of what's the word? It's the work that kind of pays itself back.
Yeah.
You know, like,
And
you're
at
doing
least with
good.
residency, it's like you're interning, you know, you're getting
Learning.
on the job training. So you're
Yeah.
actually experiencing what it's like to be a doctor. I mean,
Yeah, totally.
you're a doctor in training, basically, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Do you?
So that's kind of why I think you see a lot of these attorneys at some point into their career where they're like, you know, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm burning out. I'm not enjoying my career.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of confidence and guts to say, okay, I need to pivot,
Right.
especially if they've got golden handcuffs on and they're making a lot of money and they've got a certain lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zakiya, I got a question for you, because you really touched on something earlier that I feel like is really part of, like, the crux of what's going on right now. And that's, our education system. I don't know if we're behind or ahead or what, but I feel like the way that knowledge is moving right now, if I could use that metaphor, a high school degree, it's worth something, but it's not really worth what it might have been years ago, right? In this digital age, I believe the bachelor's degree is kind of the new high school degree at a very
That's
minimum.
been the case for a while.
Right. And maybe it's probably even starting to approach graduate studies, a master's, some sort of master's, something like that. And I hate to say it, because maybe the universities kind of understand that, right? And there's a whole money machine that goes with all of that. You have to get your bachelor's, and that whole thing. But kind of knowing that, it's almost as if, in my opinion, I actually graduated later in life, and so what I realize is the stuff that I learned, and maybe it's because it was all new, but the stuff that I learned, I could have used that 30, 40 years ago, 30 years ago. I could have used that. And even if they're coming out with bachelors and they don't know what they're doing, and you can help them with the soft skills to find whatever job there is, what I'm seeing is the job listings, they seem like it's just like, just have a bachelor's, almost as if just have a high school degree. Do you know what I mean? Just to get you here as a very base level, and then we'll figure out the job description.
So actually, we see that where there is a devaluing of degrees as well. So just have a bachelor's degree kind of came in place when employers wanted to do a weeding out process So that's why you'll see them say, oh, just have a bachelor's degree. And they're like, okay, but what's interesting is the requirements are not changing from when it might have only required a high school diploma. The salary hasn't changed. It's just now have the bachelor's degree so we can weed out more candidates. And then unfortunately now so many people, because college wasn't just something that any and everybody could go to with, in previous years. Now with student loans, anybody who can get a student loan can enter into college of some sort, whether it's community college or what have you. So now you have an overabundance of individuals with degrees. So it's creating this issue where so many people have degrees, now the value of them. So that's why you see that it's kind of the new high school diploma. Unfortunately, though, now people don't know they're getting degrees in any and everything what we call soft degrees. That are not getting them the best return on their investment financially. So you might have all this student loan debt for a degree that didn't give you a good ROI. You're working in a job that you could have gotten without the degree in the first place. Like I said, you see so many people who are working jobs that only require high school diploma, or they're overqualified for them. It's unfortunate,
What are your thoughts on that? Because it's a tough one, because you want to pursue your passion. But if you go to a school that charges $70,000 a year in tuition, and you're getting a liberal arts degree, and your major is, art or marketing or communications, if you have student debt, you're not gonna, what's the value of that degree, and is it worth it?
No. I'm just flat out say no, please don't do that.
And unless you do that, you follow your passions, you do that, but you also make the plan to add on some sort of certificate program.
There you go.
Some sort of some sort of technical program that you can get in and out of with an additional 6 months. That's not going to cost you, an arm and a leg beyond your degree.
But then I would question, why not just get that certificate program and not get the $70,000
because of the bachelor degree, because just have a bachelor degree in order to for us to look at your resume.
Yes, I don't know though, because you have so many companies now like Google and IBM and all these companies that are saying we don't even want the degree anymore. We want you to have the skills and the certificate. If the certificate, they might even give you the ability to get that while you're working there or before you enter. So there is a shift happening. I'm seeing even more Gen Z, like current college students, that are opting to go to trade school to learn skills.
There's a huge demand for that, right?
Exactly. And then many of them are paying more than people coming out with a bachelor's degree, even master's degrees. So it's kind of like you have to really be strategic about the way you navigate both higher education and your career. One, is it worth it financially? If money is just the focus and having a stable job, I wouldn't say just go get a liberal arts or interdisciplinary studies degree. It would not be worth your time, especially if you have to take out student loans to do it. I don't see the purpose in it. Now, if you're going to use that degree in liberal arts and say, okay, now I have these skills that I developed in that degree program, like maybe communication and writing or being creative, and then I go and transfer that in a marketing field, or use it in some type of communications, TV and film, or something that that you have a plan to actually develop a career in it, then fine, right? But I would suggest that you start while you're in school. Like I tell them, start before you finish. Start creating your career now. Don't wait until you have the degree conferred, because then it's kind of too late, right? Start making your connections now. Start interning, even if because a lot of these liberal arts programs don't require internships. So start interning now. Create your own internship. Call up a company and say, hey, can I shadow somebody? But don't just get a liberal arts degree and expect a job to appear on your lap after you graduate. That typically doesn't happen.
Are you seeing a lot of, I just read this somewhere, maybe on LinkedIn or something, but there were some younger people complaining that now it's gone beyond the masters, right? And now they're starting to require PhDs in some job listings.
So, yeah.
And that when they get on the job, some might qualify, they get on the job, and I don't want to get into a whole generational thing, even though the title of our show is very generational, but but they get on the job and they see that some of the older people that have been there for a while have bachelor's degrees and have pensions and stuff like that. They're coming in with the PhD and they don't get any of those benefits that because they phased out the pension program, but still owe on that.
Right.
So I'm just wondering have you seen any of that out there in terms of, we talked about devaluing degree. Have you seen any of that kind of step up? And what does somebody who has a master's do now that, the dream job now, they moved the goalpost?
Right. So credential creep is definitely a real thing. I think I was reading how physical therapists only used to require a bachelor's, and now it's doctorate level work, same work, but the requirement, the credential of that field or that industry is requiring a doctorate degree. You can't do anything about it if that's the requirement and that's your dream, right? Of course, then I would recommend how to be smarter about funding the education, because in that case, you would have to get that education if that's what you want to go into. But if there are things that are really general and generic, I myself have a background in, fields that are not in high demand, aside from the education degree, but I would not fund that through student loans. I wouldn't recommend somebody say, oh, I'm going to take out all this debt so that I can, get a degree in something that won't give them a good return. But in those cases where credential creep is real, you have to do it. It really just depends on the industry.
Yeah. Hopefully you're already in a job.
Yeah.
And then you realize, okay, to take this to the next level and,
right.
And not like, oh, my job search isn't working, I should go get another degree and knock it out in the next year.
All the time.
Right?
Yeah. I feel so bad when I see people do that. They're like, oh, I can't find a job or blah, blah, and I'm gonna just go get another degree. And then they get degrees in something that once they get the master's, is still not giving them the best return. I think I recently read it was 36% of bachelor's degree holders earn more than half of master's degree holders. So you really have to be strategic. I tell people, look, you have to understand it's not just the degree itself. Yeah. It's what you get it in, and also how do you navigate? How do you connect with people who can open doors to opportunity? Yeah. How do you market yourself? How do you develop your skills, new skills, develop on your old skills? It's a whole holistic approach. It's not just the education. And unfortunately, the generation before me told me it's just the education. Get the degree and you'll get a job.
Yeah.
No,
that's that was true. That was actually true
back
then. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the shift really, in my opinion, happened with as we kind of moved into this information age. Knowledge is attained quicker.
Exactly.
The types of jobs, have changed completely. Like the same stuff that they were doing even in the 90s, they don't approach the type of work the same way now.
Right.
Digitalization of everything, the internet, all of that stuff, has really changed the landscape.
It is. It has.
With respect to the internet, and all of these options you have now to learn online, a lot of it free, a lot of it a lot less expensive than traditional universities. At least from what I'm seeing as a parent with a college kid, I'm not seeing tuition not bump up every year, regardless of whether in a recession or what. It just ticks up every single year, that tuition. So I'm not seeing it start to impact tuition, right? Do you see a trend developing? Could you see a trend developing where people are not willing to pay that much tuition and try to pursue something online?
Before you answer, I'll just say this. For me, my journey was I actually tested out of half of my bachelor's degree. Now, this is me being, over 50, and I found some schools that do that. But maybe for older people like me, that I have a whole, background in front of me, I was able to, it's easy, I'll just test out of it. But anyway, go ahead and answer, just kind of keeping that in mind.
Yeah, I've definitely seen it. I've seen, and I don't necessarily want to recommend it, but I've seen it. I'm not opposed to it. I've seen where many Gen Zers now are, again, dropping out or opting to go to trade school, take the certification route, do online stuff, create their own businesses while in college or before they get there so that they can kind of do an alternative route to higher education. And definitely I would recommend it if you already are on that path towards something. If you just kind of don't know where to go, you're just floating around, maybe you do need more structure, and maybe higher education, as far as traditionally, will provide you with that. Maybe start at a junior college first so that you don't pay all those fees and everything. But definitely college is increasing. And I don't want to quote this statistic because I can't remember the span of years, but I know it increased over 1,200% as far as the fees, college fees. I don't know what span of time it was though. So, but it's continuing to increase. So what do you do? Yeah. It is. It's so what do you do? So I definitely would recommend looking at ways that you can get into your, so many people are trying to get into tech and real estate and all of these things that may not require a bachelor's degree. And if they do, I would highly recommend getting mentorship before even entering into college to get someone that is in that field to help you navigate the system. Right. Instead of just listening to your parents, which I tell in my book, the first chapter is don't listen to your parents. And I know, I'm a parent myself, but I don't want students to listen to outdated or antiquated, ideas about higher education, when the best bet would be to get a mentor in the field, in the area, in the line of where they aspire to be. Of course, be respectful and listen to what your parents are saying, but what I mean is don't shape your career around, whatever they're pushing you towards if it doesn't make sense for your life. That's
really good advice. When you're working with your clients, I'm wondering what the ratio is of people that, because you said a lot of your clients are already employed. Do they just want to find a lateral move, or are they willing to make less to be more happy?
It depends. I've had people who are just like, I want to be happy. Of course, happiness is it depends on the person, right? So it could be, I want to be happy in a field that I enjoy, or I just want to be happy because I want to just work the least amount of time so that I can enjoy experiences. So some of them want to be happy in their field and their work be their happiness, as far as like maybe they want to be creative, right? I get a few of those. But then others are just like, I just want to be able to work to sustain myself and enjoy life so that I can have experiences. I get a little mix between the two.
Yeah. Interesting.
So you have the book coming out, and you mentioned something about possibly are you building out a course or some kind of group coaching or?
Yes, I'm planning one specifically for people who are already in their career. I've been getting a lot of connections from people who are in what's called mid-career, who are looking to pivot, and which was not my target audience. I was looking to help those that are, but hey, the opportunity came, and I actually enjoy helping people kind of navigate through that, because I myself left higher education, which was something that was mostly what I had aspired to be since, grad school, and as a professor. And I said, this is a path that I enjoy, but I'm no longer on that journey. So I guess I'm connecting with people that are like myself now, even more.
Great. That's interesting. So Zakiya, tell our audience how they can learn more about you, where they can get your book, where they can learn about your courses.
So you can learn more about me at ZakiyaAkarele.com. My book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much anywhere you can find books online. It's there. And the title is Dump Your Degree, How to Repurpose Your Education, Control Your Career, and Gain Financial Freedom. And I'm also on social media, although not as frequently as I should be. TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, all of them are at Zakiya Akarele.
That's great.
Yes.
Well, this has been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, I love the topic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed my time.
10X for Gen XYZ is hosted by Zach Winter and Marcader Rios, co-founders of Prosperity CRE, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and building long-term wealth. If you like the podcast, please give us a positive rating and subscribe to be notified about future content. Also, if you'd like to learn more about our approach to real estate investing, you can download a free copy of our real estate investment book, Investing for Cash Flow and Long-Term Wealth, by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thank you, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes.